I'm Hayden McEvoy, founder of A-Team Tuition and the A-Game podcast. I grew up with ADHD, went from failing the first 9 years of school to becoming a straight-A student. Since then, I partnered with over 100 schools and helped over 20,000 students become A students through the same method. This podcast is exactly how we've done it. Let's find your A-game. I decided to finish swimming at that point. I was quite disappointed on how those trials went. And that's when I went, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought about, I want to find other students or other kids that were like me, either in swimming and get them to believe in themselves, or in school and go from there. And so I came up with something called quality tutoring, came up with a heap of flyers and just put my grades on it. And then I posted them all over the Gold Coast. And I finally got a call from a family who was a Gold Coast Year 10 girl, Bianca. And her mum was lovely. And she said, yeah, my daughter's getting D's and, your grades look really impressive. Can you come and help? And so I said, yep, sure. And I was so nervous rocking up to her house. I was getting $50 an hour versus $9 an hour at Dan Murphy's. And I was like, how good is this? I'm getting paid to do something I love. And I absolutely cannot stuff this up. I spent hours reading online how to be a tutor, how to do all this. And back then, tutoring was really new. There wasn't a lot of companies around, and Kit McGrath were really the only main people around. And they had all these lesson plans and things, and everything was about just giving the answers to content. And so I thought, all right, that's how we do tutoring. So I started working with Bianca, and she was on D's, and I could just see she was floating through life exactly how I was. She was disinterested, disorganized. She would come to each session with more problems, and it was just compounding. And she had also shaped her identity around being a socialite and didn't believe that she could do it. And so the first term, I did exactly what I learnt from the Kit McGrath blogs to do, and she went from a D to a D+. And I remember getting that and going, oh, that's disappointing. And the mum had said to me, look, we can't keep affording this if she's not going to get better grades. And I was like, I cannot lose this. So I said to her, just give me one more shot, give me one more term. I'll give you all the money back if it doesn't work. I've got a plan. I want to try it my way. And so I came into the next term, and I said, for the first month, we're not doing any tutoring. We're going to purely create your game plan and your A game of how you're going to study, how you're going to do assignments, how you're going to, even down to your relationship with the teacher, where you're going to sit. And I want to see all these things. And we turned it into 5 checkpoints. And I got her to type it up, print it out, and we binded it. And it was like, and she signed it, I signed it. We said, this is the plan. We're going to do this. And so I mainly just coached her on that plan, shaped how she studied. And what I started noticing was she was coming to me week by week with less and less questions. And it kind of changed mid-term where she was starting to teach me things. And I could see just this spark going up, and the confidence started to light. And then when she started thinking she was good at it, the motivation just flooded in. And at the end of that term, she nailed it. I remember getting a call after the exam. She was so excited. And the mum sent me a text and she got an A. And so in 3 months, went from a D+ to an A. From there, I went, oh, we have untapped something amazing here, just trying to systemize what I went through. Because when I transformed my grades, it wasn't just like, oh, I got a tutor and got extra grades. Like, it was like 6 months of like just trying to build some kind of confidence that I can do it. And then when that confidence came, the mountain of motivation came, and I was like, I'm good at this, and I want to be good at this, and I want to do more of this. And that's when the grades came slowly but surely after that. And I think that's where a lot of parents throw in the towel too early. Is like, transformation takes time. I always say it takes 6 months to see movement, 2 years to see full transformation. And it's one of those things, it's like a hockey stick. You don't see a lot of movement for a lot of time. You just see a happier kid that wants to go to sessions, that wants to learn. And then the grades are like that lagging indicator, because the grade is the output. All the inputs that lead to that grade is like confidence, believing you can do it, going to every class, doing the study, doing the work, being serious in the exam. When everything's executed well, the grade comes, but the grade's sometimes, a semester grade 6 months down the track. And so from there, I started going, you know what, I'm pretty good at this. I want to do more of this. And so by the end of that year, I had 16 students all at the same school as Bianca, same year level in a mixture of chemistry and maths, and repeated the same process. And I had all 16 achieving A's by the end of that year as well, which was pretty cool. And then the following year, that's when A-Team Tuition began. One of my mates who was studying business said, hey, this is going pretty big. And at that age, I was living at home, and I was doing about 35 hours of tutoring a week at $50 an hour. So I went from never, ever, ever making any money to just having piles of cash for the first time in my life, not knowing what to do with it. And he said, yeah, let's start a business. And so I started A-Team Tuition with him, and then we ended up growing to 48 students in the next 3 months. And unfortunately, he then got a full-time job in his career, and we shook hands, and I bought 50% of the company back for $800, which was the best investment I've ever made today. And so I remember we had a bit of a falling out at the end then too, and he'd told one of my friends that there was no way this was going to succeed because I didn't know what I was doing, and that was just this fire in the belly that was like, I'm going to prove this wrong. And I went all in after that, and I started working 7 days a week, and it became my obsession. My obsession initially was I wanted to find a way to create a program that transformed students and A students consistently. So I wanted to systematize my own transformation so I could gift that to as many other students as I possibly could, because it was something that absolutely transformed my life, went from a 2 out of 10 quality life to a 10 out of 10. And there was such a pleasure in being able to do that for Bianca and her friends. And I wanted to do that for as many other students as I could. So over the next period, I was like, I'm all in. I finished uni. I dropped out of uni. I had 5 subjects to go of my undergrad. Didn't get to finish it, unfortunately. And just purely focused on transforming students. And so the goal was to create that program. And it was such a wild ride. I had so many lunches where I would invite 10 math tutors and 10 English tutors, and these were like the smartest kids I could find at university. And I would just be like, what's your secrets? How do you do it? And I came up with this big document. It was 2,500 pages of every single secret I'd been told from every single different person and what they did. And then I hired some uni students that were studying education and doing Masters of Ed to then find all the literature they could to align to those anecdotes. And it became this big project. And we called it the Creating A Students program. And what was really cool was we started finding all these studies that were like supporting, the science was supporting what we were doing. So one of the first strategies we said is sit at the front of class. You want to build a relationship with the teacher, show that you're serious. You want to be close to them so you hear everything. And then this study came out about something called the T section, which is essentially the front of the class and the back of the class. This study looked at a bunch of students, and they moved kids from the sides into the T section. And 6 months later, they went up an entire grade doing nothing else, just moving into that. And what it did, it funneled and focused their attention into the class so that they basically paid more attention, engaged more in class, and therefore they got better grades. And it was fascinating because I just kept finding science literature piece by piece by piece that kept matching these anecdote stories and strategies that all these tutors that had shared with me over time. And so this project became cutting edge, and I was obsessed with it. It was like a real obsession. And I remember I started testing students, and being young, I went way too far into these 10-page surveys that asked questions about everything. And I remember some families being like, you don't need to know that stuff. And I was like, oh, I went a bit too far there. But it became like my own scientific project. And so in 2017, we had grown to 66 team members, and we had 300 students on the Gold Coast. And we were just seeing A's and B's everywhere. Like very few students came in on above a B, but like they all were leaving at A's and B's. And I'd catch up with tutors, and at the end of the term, I'd go, give me all your students' grades. And some of them would just have like a portfolio of just A's the whole way down. And we always made blue. A was always blue, and we'd always talk about seeing blue, and it was this beautiful collage of blues, and we hated greens, which was B. So everything was about A's. And so by the end of that, we collated all our data, and 87% of our students were achieving A's and high B's. And the average grade coming in was a C. So at that point, we said, okay, we've got something pretty special. We need to test this. So I started something called the Limitless Project. And so the Limitless Project was designed to show firsthand Australia that any student can achieve A grades with the right mindset, strategy, and support. That were our pillars. We knew if we could get the right mindset, we knew if we gave them the right strategies, and we then supported them through the process, that any student could do it. So this particular school on the Gold Coast, state school on the Gold Coast, said, yep, we're keen to do this. And I said, we're going to give away a $5,000 scholarship. It's going to go for a year. And basically, we're looking for someone that the system's written off, that no one believes in, and we want to do this. I got really behind it because I was obsessed with this project, and I called Channel 9 and said, my brother's going to be at this event. And this was the year he was #1 in the world in the 100 freestyle in 2016 and 15. And so they were like, is Hayden McEvoy going to be there? I'm like, yeah, he's going to be there. So then I get to the school, and we jump up at the assembly, and there's about 1,000 parents there to announce that we're doing this project. And then Channel 9 rocks up down the back, and I remember I'm sitting there and I was 24 years old, and I just had this thought, and I was like, oh, what if this doesn't work? I'm going to look like the biggest fool. And I was like low-key wigging out. And I can see I'm on the program. They're about to announce me. And then they're like, and Hayden McEvoy from A-Team here is to talk about a new project. And I was like, oh. And I just stood up and I said, nah, this is the moment where I am either all in or I'm not. And the accountability, I've always thought that I achieved my best in life when I put myself in a corner and I either figure it out or die. That's where I've achieved outsized human performances. And that's where as I've gotten older, I've realized I like to stay in that space, as stressful as it is. I like the thrill and the challenge. And so this was one of those moments, and got up to the microphone, announced what it was, saw Channel 9 down the back, and I looked straight at them and I said, we're going to find an E student and we're going to turn them into an A student. We're going to show you that any student can do this. And it was really cool. The school got behind it. Channel 9 thought it was a great concept, and they filmed me afterwards doing interviews, and then we got a small 2-minute segment on the news that night about it. So then from there, and my brother did come and handed out in the end. So then from there we got started. So we said, all right, we're going to give out these scholarships, and we had 104 students apply. And in these future episodes of this podcast, I'm going to talk about the limitless files, and because some of these transformations were mental, they were unbelievable and changed the way that the education and the school system viewed performance. And long story short, the first 2 students that we picked up, one was an E in year 9, one was a D with ASD. And by the end of the first term, the girl on E's went to A's and the boy on D's went to A's by the end of the year. And we got to then get up at the end of year awards and present that and show their story. And that's when Channel 9 came to that, and they were like, wow, you actually did this. And we got to show these 2 students who were E and D students achieve A grades. And I'm going to be talking about their particular stories in future episodes because they're incredible how they did it. And it was very systematic how they did it. And so from there, Channel 9 aired the story that night, and boom, A-Team went nuts. At that point, we started getting calls from families everywhere, from signing 50, 60 families a term to 250 a term, literally in 6 months, all on the Gold Coast. And then we started doing Brisbane because we had Gold Coast families that had Brisbane relatives. And so I hadn't spent $1 on marketing at this point because I didn't know, not because I just didn't know what to do. And it just grew organically. And so after that, we decided we were going to turn the Limitless project into a real study. We launched in Brisbane the next year and made the project Brisbane-wide. We had 2 students we picked out of 200 applicants, and those girls have the most incredible story they'll tell later too. But they went from C's and D's to A+, and are now achieving massive things. And so we got to see time and time again when everything went to plan, these students would just fly. And then we ended up doing 11 of these projects. And the further through we got, we started going from 12 months to 9 months to 6. And we tested everything. There was so much data we collected with this, and we learned so much. And at the end of the project, by 2020, we had 11 students undergo it. 10 of them became A students. The 11th student got a B+. And that was because we shortened that program so much that we didn't quite get there in the end. And so at that point, we were like, wow, we're onto something. It works. It works when it's done properly. And so it wasn't long after where COVID hit. And that's when all of a sudden we weren't sure what was going to happen. And I had the fortunate opportunity where we just partnered with the Australian Boarding School Association, and they had asked me, hey, can you come up and present to our boarding principals and schools on how to do digital education, how to move to that, because we'd been doing online tutoring for a bit. And I rocked up to their headquarters, and they're like, yeah, this is our first webinar. We might get like 50 people come to this. And so I'm in my best suit. You walk in, and it's just this big screen at the end there, and then you start seeing people logging in. About 5 minutes to go, there was like 4,500 people on. And I just looked at the clock and went, this is like the national final equivalent of the 100 butterfly. And I just went, I'm just going to go for it. And at this point, I still had these insecurities of like, yes, I transformed students, but for a long time, I felt that people saw me as a fraud because I didn't have an education degree. And I pitched at thousands of schools in the early years, and they wanted nothing to do with it. So I had this like fear of like education professionals, that I was going to get caught out for being a fraud because I was doing something so different to what they had said. And I'd gotten in trouble a couple of times before because I'd told students I believe they could get A's, and the school had said there's no way that's going to happen. And they were trying to kick them from the high math to the lower math. And I was saying, no, stay in there. And even, there was moments where I was clashing with in my own school on that. And I was told not to give false belief to students, which I never, ever backed down on, and created some enemies from that. But that's my value, is any student can do this. And I've seen it happen. So then ended up having an exceptional talk. Spoke about mindset, strategy, support, how to manage that moving digital. And in the weeks to come, everything went nuts. I started getting calls from principals all over the country saying, we love what you do. Can you come and talk at our school? Can you come and run a program here? And one of the first programs we kicked off was the King's School in Sydney, which is one of the most prestigious schools in the country. And I remember rocking up to the school and meeting with them and going, what am I doing here? Like, I failed most of school, and these guys want me to tell them how to get transformations. And we shook hands from them. They sent an email out to the school base, and we were off. We had 50 families sign up in that month, and that was how we launched Sydney. And then we did the same in every other city, and now we're in 9 cities across Australia, being Townsville, Toowoomba, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Adelaide, Perth. And we expanded through these partnerships in advising and transforming students at these amazing schools. And so at this point, the vision of A-Team rapidly changed. We went, okay, we've got a program that creates A students. How do we mass produce that? How do we give this gift to as many students as we possibly can? And so we've formulated the next vision, which we're currently in at the moment, which is 10 to the power of 4. So that was provide every student the opportunity to succeed in school across 10 cities, 100 school partnerships, 1,000 academic personal trainers, transforming 10,000 students a year. And that's the vision that we've been chasing at the moment, and we're about 50% of the way to that vision, which has been an incredible journey and ride. And we currently have just over 3,000 students that are in the company, and 34 partnered schools that we are delivering these programs all over the country. So that essentially is the core story of A-Team, and how I went from one of the lowest performing students with ADHD to one of the highest performing, the fastest swimmer on the planet for my age, and then one of the greatest, most powerful education companies in the country. And it all came back to what I believe is the mindset, the strategy, and support. And I think it's like the compounding effect is something that's fascinating, because I think of these moments in time where my direction shifted. And everybody in life thinks that there's these silver bullets. You find that silver bullet and that one thing, and then your whole life transforms. And it's hundreds of thousands of little decisions that compound year after year after year. And so a lot of people come to me and go, wow, A-Team's so big now. How did you do that? And I've been doing this 15 years. It's a 15-year overnight success. 15 years, and then beyond that, another 15 years of my own journey and my own stories. And if it wasn't for the struggles that I went through, I never would have understood what it really feels like to fail, what it really feels like to be the kid the system doesn't believe in, to go to school and be embarrassed, to look at your friends and think there's something wrong with you. But then equally, if I hadn't have gone through this journey, I wouldn't know what it feels like to be the best in the world at something, which is wild. It's a wild feeling. So to recap, the main message I want to say is that truly anybody can achieve success with the right mindset, strategy, and support. I have proven this from being, the worst athlete to the fastest on the planet for my age, from being a D student with ADHD to a straight A student topping university, and then now, starting a business where I was told that it would never succeed, to being one of the largest in our category in Australia. And we never decided to be the largest. It was all about creating A students and how many A students can we create. And that's still the core spirit and the vision and the values of why we're here and why we come here every day. When times are hard, when we're going through massive growth, when things are falling apart, everything comes back to, if we can just have that next one student have that transformation moment, then student by student, we're essentially reshaping the future of our country. And I think that's an exciting reason to be here and an exciting reason to come to work every single day. It's why I get in here at 5:30 every day and work till 3:30, and our whole team's behind this, because it's electric. It's exciting. So this podcast is about sharing the lessons we learn along the way to achieving 10 to the power of 4. It's sharing the transformations we learned, the game plans we learned. That's why we called this the A game, because it's about unlocking your A game. There really is a system to everything in life. You know, success leaves clues. If you can get the right mindset, learn the strategy, which over time becomes the skill. And then high skill is seen as talent. Humans have this way of, when we don't understand something, we refer to it as talent. Whereas talent is just strategy that has been done right from the start, performed in mass volume until it becomes skill, until it's so good that people don't understand it and they go, it's talent. And I watched this with my brother. From a young age, I was about how hard can I bash the water. Cam was about how do I get in the perfect hydroplane position, even as like a 6-year-old. And he would measure. I remember one conversation I had with him where he spoke about how he wanted to surgically remove 2 ribs so he could be more hydrodynamic in the water. And my mum said, there's no way you're doing that. It's not going to happen. And so getting in his mind, it's all about the 1%ers and what's the right strategy. And I think that's why he is so successful, is he figures the strategy out first. He researches it, he learns it, he finds it from mentors, and then he just does that strategy and he creates good skills and good habits until they're so good that people go, it's talent. And that's what I've learned following him, and then through my own story here too. We don't understand high performance, and sometimes it makes us insecure, so we refer to it as talent because it's easier to understand that. Whereas talent is just a whimsical, they're born that way. Whereas I just don't believe it. So I want this podcast to be for everybody out there that is feeling how I was, that's floating through life, that doesn't think that they're succeeding, that doesn't think that they've got a life ahead of them. I'm going to share so many stories of transformation, some crazy ones. We're going to have some of the most successful people on the planet on this podcast, including my brother. We're going to be doing a lot of episodes together, unpacking his mindset and how he won the Olympics. And we're going to be getting a lot of our tutors. I want to share some of the most powerful discussions I've had has been lunches with tutors where I go, what's your game plan? What was your A game plan? How did you do it? And hearing the many different ways that they've figured out what works for them. And I want to get some of these high performers on this podcast so you can listen firsthand from them, what they do, what their stories are, the transformations they've had with their students, and how all that works. So I look forward to more of these episodes, and we're going to go straight into the next episode, which we're titling The Year 9 Student That Changed Everything. And that's going to be our first of the Limitless files. So I look forward to speaking to you on that episode. And for now, remember, we need to believe before anyone else does. We need to believe in students before they believe in themselves. We need to believe in ourselves before we believe in ourselves. And so everything at the core, at the seed, starts with believe. And so if you're going to do one thing this week, find a way to believe in the impossible even when no one else does. Thank you.